Hey guys, it's Mixie and today I'm so excited because to celebrate Infinity War, we're going to go ahead and make an Infinity Gauntlet cake. So the first step, all we need to do is create a cake board. So we just need a piece of cardboard and we're going to get some gold foil so that we can make a nice matching base for the cake. So the next step is all we have to do is trim the excess part of the cake on the top just so that when we add the other two layers they can lay nice and flat. And you guys know I had to do a marble cake for the marble cake, right? So here you go. You can see, just get the two layers nice on top of each other. Make sure you put a lot of frosting in the middle, just so that it can actually help with the support system later on too. So the first step now, I'm just going to go ahead and do a crumb coat first. And I do want to do it nice and thin at first, and then you're going to do the final coat because I will be airbrushing the base of the cake. So I got the idea from the post credits from Age of Ultron. I actually wanted to do a base for where the gauntlet will be sitting on it. So for this is corrugated plastic because we need something strong because the gauntlet is going to be really heavy. So once you get that plastic, cut it at the angle so it looks like the base from the movie. And then we're going to use that. And as you can see, I only cut through the top layer of the corrugated plastic. That way it's bendable, but it's still one solid piece. And here you guys can see just the side of it. I wanted you guys to see that. I mean, it's going to be completely empty in the middle, but it's still going to be really strong. And I'm actually going to add a couple extra layers to it to make it stronger in the front of the back. And I'll show you guys that in a minute. And basically you're going to actually tape the sides because of course, you know, when you get that sheet of plastic it's only but so long, so you will have to tape that outside piece. So here you see in the front and in the back I added an extra layer of plastic, so I would really have support where I'll actually be laying the gauntlet on, just to make sure it doesn't basically fall apart, especially since that side is not taped together. So I hope that kind of, I try to show you guys the visuals. And I added some frosting on top of the base because I will be airbrushing that part too, just to make sure it looks completely seamless when I do the end. So, and yes, our gauntlet is made of Rice Krispie treats, and it is probably the biggest Rice Krispie treat I've ever seen in my life. It's gonna be like 12-pound, guys. So I did want to make it look like he was actually going to go ahead and be able to put his hand inside the gauntlet. And so just make like the shape of it. I don't know how else to put it. You guys see the shape, right? Just make sure you create the shape. So we're actually going to also put some skewers in the just to give some structure because we don't want it to fall apart. And we will actually be freezing it after I put all the sticks inside of it just to make sure it gets solid. And it was probably a couple hours. It doesn't take too long. And then once it's frozen, all you have to do is roll out your fondant, and you're going to go ahead and first I'm actually going to cover the bottom of the gauntlet because I want to, it's not easy to, you know, make a super long piece just so it's completely seamless. So all you want to do is just cover the bottom, and you want to put it, let's say not all the way like 2/3, but you want to cut it at the ends, the sides, just enough that way when you put the top layer on it's going to look a little bit more seamless once you put the details on. And don't worry about like all the bumps because you're actually going to be putting so many layers on it, you're not going to be able to see that at all. So just use your X-Acto knife and just start trimming it, just to make it a nice even cut, as you'll see in a second. And then yeah, just smooth it down, so make sure it's like really stuck on there. That's why it's actually helpful to freeze the Rice Krispie treat. So then for this part, I'm just gonna go ahead and I wanted to create that nice indentation, and I wanted to do this before I put the top layer on because it's gonna look a little bit more seamless, because when I start trimming it, it's just gonna look a little bit better, and you don't want to actually have that on top of it because I'm gonna put like the little rope trim on it, so it's gonna look really nice. So just use a little ball stylus tool so that you can get it in there without actually cracking the fondant. So that tool actually helps a lot. And sorry I was out of frame a little bit, but I still wanted you guys to see how I trimmed it up and just how nicely it looks. And then yeah, you'll end up with something like this. It's completely covered. Oh, and by the way, once you put it, once you're doing the top part of the Rice Krispie treats, it'll get flat, so you actually have to flip it over and put more Rice Krispie treats on the bottom before you do the last part, just so that it's nice and round on both sides. So now we're going to go ahead and make the fingers. So just as you can see, I also added wires because that's how we're actually going to get it to connect inside of the gauntlet. So just make a bunch of finger shapes, try to, do different lengths. And then, yeah, just take your fondant smoother and flatten it out so that we can actually get that metal armor kind of look. You don't want them to be round. You want it to be nice and flat so that when you start putting the details, they look really good together. So, and by the way, yeah, those wires were not long enough. I'll show you guys in a sec that I actually had to reinforce it with some wooden skewers, and I actually had to trim part of the end of the fingers off just so that it would connect better. And then, yeah, just so that the joints stick together, I used the ball stylus tool again just so that I would have a better place for the fingers to sit in to the part of the fist so that it could, it won't collapse as easy. So it helps out a lot. And then here you guys see, this is where I put the extra wire and a skewer just to, give it a little bit of extra support. Yeah, it looks kind of crazy now, guys, but trust me, it's going to end up looking really good in a second. And since this is frozen, we're going to have to start taking a piece off the side, as you can see here, because it was, too wide. So I want it to be nice and flat to look more like armor. Now this is the fun part. Just use some edible glue, which is just Tylose and water. And then here I cut out, a couple pieces of rectangle fondant, and you want to layer them on top of each other. And I love this toolkit because it gives you different sizes, so you can really start getting, with the details. So yeah, just see how I'm just rolling it across, and I also rolled it horizontally and vertically. And yeah, it also comes with those silicone tips too. So yeah, I just use like a flat edge one to kind of make those lines and indentations. And now remember how I told you, you just want to make, we're going to start adding multiple layers. So this is just, once again, that edible glue. And then we're going to go ahead and start adding our layers and all of our details. So this is like the fun part. I'm so excited. This is when I really started, seeing it come together, start looking much better. So yeah, just take your fondant smoother again and start trying to, not only to make sure the layers stick together, but so that it's nice and flat and you start getting rid of those lumps from the Rice Krispie treat. So yeah, then here I just cut out some zigzags for, the front plate of the gauntlet. I did make each individual piece one by one, but when I put it together, it did not look too good. So I was like, let me just go ahead and try to make a different template to make it look a little bit better. I probably could have spent a lot more time on it, but when I did each piece individually, I just didn't like the way it came out. So I was like, let me just try something else. So then just start making your details. That's just simple. 3 straight lines and just flip it over, and then layer them on top of each other. So, and then again, you see I use a bunch of edible glue because once each layer is dry, the other layers don't easily stick to each other. So you're going to have to use a lot of that. And I'll probably just make another video on how I make the edible glue, but it's like super easy. And then this is the middle plate, and for this one I actually like the way this one came out because if you notice in the middle, it's not like dots indented into the font, it's actually embossed. So in a second you'll see how I use the piping tip, and I'll be able to use to make the indentations to actually make it look like it has the little holes in it. So it looks really cool embossed in there instead of just a dot inside of the font. So that's a little tip I think you guys might want to try and find helpful. So I think it looks really cool. And then actually this is the part where I realized I was actually running out of space. So I just created those plates for the side, and then just keep adding your layers, more and more. It's gonna start looking really, really good. So you'll see, I think I should have actually made the fist about 1 inch longer, because at this point I started noticing that some of the details, especially where the stones are gonna go, it wasn't enough space. But I'll show you guys what I could have did better. That way you don't make the same mistake that I did on this part. But overall I think it's it's turning out really good. So once you put this second, the main reason that I put, you want to do the fist part last. That way, when you overlap it, you'll be able to actually trim over it, because you basically want to stack it like you would do like the real armor. So make sure you do the fist part last. But that's why it's so important to measure that you have enough, space to actually get all the details in properly. So for this one, then just start trimming away the edges, that way all the other details underneath will show. So, and yeah, at this point also make sure don't put too much edible glue under the layers, because it can start dissolving the fondant. So just do a very fine line. And this is where I also should have waited to do the Mind Stone last, because there was actually a gap. The little ring that I just did, it was just too wide, so I should have waited to do that part last. And then here's how it looks, guys. I think it came out super awesome. So I am so excited for how everything turned out. And then the next step you guys will see in a moment, I'm going to go ahead and start painting, which is like the most fun part. So yeah, at this point, just make sure all your details are the way that you like it. And if you want to do any other movement, make sure you change it now because once you do the paint, it's going to be crazy to remove that. So you cannot take the paint off. So yeah. And then here's the powders that I'm using. I love these because they are really vibrant and beautiful. So these are my total favorite ones that I use like in all the cakes. So I wanted to use different colors because it's going to help with the shadows and the highlights, and it's going to make everything look really, really good. So, and you can see that I wanted to make sure that it matched the best. So you can see like the gold highlights, that's going to really, really help a lot for when we do the shading of it. So, and then here I'll show you guys, yeah, once again, here's the color. It matches perfectly. I love that one. It looks super awesome. I think you guys are going to like the way the color comes out. And here you guys can see me mixing all the different colors. So I'm not going to mix them all together, but sometimes, as you can see, I'm mixing a few just to kind of create varying shades. But at the very end, I'll show you guys, like for example, once I paint the base color, and then I mix some of the colors, then I'll highlight it with gold to make it really pop. And as you can see, all the colors, I mean, it comes out really beautiful. I love the way the shine, I mean, it really defines all of the different layers. It makes it pop a lot. And especially with that copper, like once you, especially if you put it on a rotating base, the colors are going to look beautiful. And here I am trying to make sure I move the light around so you can see some of the shading and the depth of the color. I think it came out great. And I'm going to show you guys one of the best parts, and that's how we're going to make the infinity stones. So we're going to use Jolly Ranchers, and you have to get the 2 different bags if you want to get all the colors, but I'm going to show you a couple tricks so you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Especially because the clear one, the pineapple one, that one you can actually use. And then this purple one, I don't really like the color, so I'm going to show you how to make it with isomalt. And like I said, the clear pineapple one, you can actually add your own color to it if you want to make custom colors. And the best part to the infinity stones is that they glow. And I used LED earrings, and I haven't seen anybody else use this technique, so if you use it in one of your videos, give me a shout out. And they look really great. The earrings are really bright. It's kind of hard to see during the daytime, but when you make them glow at night, they are awesome. They're really bright, and they look really, really pretty. So they're really very easy to use, and the fact that they have the little clear stone at the tip, it kind of gives us a nice anchor, so that way you don't damage the actual circuits inside of the earring. But yeah, it's just like any regular earring. Just connect the stud at the bottom and it lights up. And here's the mold. I'm just trying to show you how. All you have to do is kind of dip it in. So this mold is perfect because it's not too deep, so it's like the exact height that we need to use to make the stones. And I actually won't be using that oval stone because I found it too big for the gauntlet. And you see the Jolly Ranchers is too much too, so I'm actually going to end up cutting it in half. I'll show you that later on, but I'm actually going to use the smaller round one. And then also what you can do is use isomalt if you don't want to use Jolly Ranchers. That way if you already have colored gel paste, you can actually just color your own isomalt. And it works the exact same way. So, you know, just to kind of save you some money. And you can see the isomalt and the clear pineapple one are pretty much the same color. But the isomalt is, of course, you know, perfectly clear. Is going to be a much better choice. But I think it's going to work out really great. And then the next step, all you want to do is to make sure that you cut a Jolly Rancher in half, and you see it fits in there perfectly. Make sure to cut it inside the wrapper, because when I cut it outside the wrapper there was a few bits of shards. You don't want to get that in your eye like I did, so I hope that kind of helps you out. Okay guys, it only takes, I have a 1000-watt microwave. It only takes 5 seconds to get soft, 10 seconds to completely liquefy. Do not go over that time because it's gonna burn. So that's the timeline that you guys can kind of follow. It literally only takes 10 seconds. And then for it to cool, basically you just want to put the diamond end into the candy, okay? And also do not put the circuits inside the candy because you don't want to damage it. And then while the candy is still soft, you can actually mold it, which was my purpose. So just, I wanted to shape it into kind of a oval shape. So, but you have to do it fast. It's like a very quick turnaround time. And this is just me showing you the isomalt. Since it's sped up, you do want to make sure you only put the gel paste on the top layer first. Wait till they kind of evaporate some of the extra water off and then mix it in. And even though it looks a bit dark there, it turns into this beautiful color. You really need very, very little. Start with much smaller quantities of color first and then add more as you need to, but you really don't need too much. But it looks really awesome, and I mean, I love it so much. I think it came out really, really beautiful. And now we're gonna go ahead and add all of the stones. I'm so excited. So here we have the reality stone first, and you can see that I also wrap some electrical tape just to make sure it doesn't separate. And of course we're gonna go have the soul stone, everything that everyone's been waiting for. And then the space stone, that was probably my favorite. And you see the mind stone, it was just like way too big. But and then for the time stone, it's a bit harder because I had to actually poke a hole in the fondant, and then we're gonna stick that in last. But don't worry. And of course the power stone last. But now we're just gonna go ahead and do the last few steps. We're almost done. I think I tried every technique on this cake, guys. Yeah, so just airbrush your cake. I use these colors because I saw one of the posters and I tried to combine all the colors they had on it, and I think it came out really good. So I'm really, really happy with the way it turned out. So yeah, then just use a brush to add some stars, you know, just some extra details, and I think it comes out really pretty. And now I'm going to also make a chocolate bar with the Avengers logo. With this one, I'll have to give you a few tips, because you really do have to make sure that each layer of chocolate dries first. So with this one, I made like one critical mistake, and I'll show you guys when it happens, because you want to make sure that if you want the letters to be really defined and not to be blended in, if the chocolate is too hot, it's going to start melting the other layers. So you really have to make sure to take your time. I would say give it at least 15 minutes depending on the thickness of each layer. These smaller outlines, you know, they're much faster. They dry much faster than the thicker layer. So that's where you can really get into trouble. Like this part right here, I probably should have waited maybe an extra 10 to 15 minutes to make sure that, you know, the layers were really, really dry, because you'll see that it did affect some of the definition. And then just add some extra chocolate. This was butterscotch. You can add a little bit of red or orange just to make the different ombre gradient effects on it. But and this is where I made the mistake. My chocolate seized, and I was trying to new emulsifier. It didn't work out. And as you can see, when I was basically trying to spackle it on, it damaged some of the letters. But overall, I think it came out pretty cool, but I should have waited. And then this is how it looks. I think it still came out pretty cool. So let's just pretend I did it on purpose and it just faded away, you know, hint, hint. But yeah, it's still coming out pretty cool. So then just trim you know, to make sure it has like a really sharp line on the edges, and it looks out really good. But um, overall, I think it's still pretty cool. It didn't really bother me too much. And of course, no Marvel movie is complete without a little cameo from Stan Lee. So I had to make a little chibi Stan Lee. That was probably one of my favorite cameos that he made. This was, I believe, yeah, from Guardians of the Galaxy. I love that one when he was in outer space. So I wanted to make it look like he was in space, of course, you know, with a well, I don't want to give any spoilers away from the movie, but yeah, it just looks so awesome. I love it. So I'm also going to create like a little jetpack for him on the back. I did have to change. Well, the reason that he doesn't have as many details in the front of his suit, it was because at first I had a different design for the cake, and I didn't want to remake the graphic again, so I was like, I'll just go with it. And then I just made him like a little Avengers jetpack for his back. But yeah, just use some candy melts, and then you can mix the colors just to get the right mixture of shading. And then like once you have the first layers made, so it's like you want to start from the highlight, like the nose, then you put the glasses, and then you know you're gonna put the face. You're working basically backwards. But I think it came out pretty cool. So then, like I said before, also make sure you let each layer dry so that nothing melts, and everything is nice and crisp. So then just repeat the process with the Avenger sign. I wanted to make sure I did the outline for the white, and then I went ahead and I put the gray last. But I think it came out really, really cool. And I think this was like what, 4 inches, and the cake was like about 6 inches high or so. So that's the kind of, you know, the proportions. You can kind of get an idea of how big it is. And then yeah, just take some more chocolate and then just stick it on the back so it looks like he has an Avengers jetpack. And I think it came out so cute. I love it so much. Stan Lee's part is always my favorite. And then yeah, these are straws to put in front of the platform, because I wanted to make it look like the post credits, you know, from Age of Ultron, the actual base, like where the metal spikes come out and actually are holding the gauntlet. So I think it came out pretty cool using all those black straws to kind of mimic, you know, like those metal spikes coming out and holding it up. So now we're gonna do the final decoration, guys. So here's a little Stan Lee, and I'm also using chocolate rocks to replicate vibranium. And then of course I add a little secret on his hand. I'll tell you guys about that in a sec, but that's probably one of my favorite parts. And then here's a close-up of the chocolate rocks. They're really, really nice, and they actually taste pretty good too. I was worried about some of the reviews, but they actually taste good, and they're nice. And yeah, here's how it looks, guys. All the Infinity Stones, the gauntlet. I mean, I think it came out amazing, you guys. I hope you guys love it as much as I do. I mean, it was so much work, but I'm like so proud of it. I couldn't have done this. PS is a shout out to my mom, because she helped me out so much. I could not have done this without her. And this was a little basically a present for Thanos. You know, he could always use a little bit more ego. So, you know, I think it came out super good. Yeah, and this cake probably weighed like 30 pounds, because the gauntlet by itself is like 12 to 15 pounds. I had to use like 6 batches of Rice Krispie treats to make the gauntlet. So it's huge, you guys. I'll show you guys a close-up in a sec of how big. So just to give you kind of like a proportion of how huge this is. But yeah, the cake was amazing, you guys. Everything tasted good, and after all that work, I think I deserve I deserve that. So my ego could use it. So yeah, yeah, it was awesome. So little Stan Lee, and here's to show you guys how big the gauntlet is. I mean, it's huge, you guys. It's life size. I try to make it as like if Thanos could actually wear it. And once again, here's a close-up of all the stones. And I mean, they came out really, really cool. I mean, especially in the dark, like when people first come in and look at it. I mean, they shine so bright. And actually for the Mind Stone, I used 2 colors, if you guys can tell. So yeah, you guys, I hope you guys liked the video, and make sure to give me some likes, subscribe to the channel. And I hope you guys enjoy, you know, watching me make the